Welcome back, everyone. So, this is our second session of this second season, and in this session, we are going to continue where we left. And we have written all these four inputs, and it's time for the other four inputs. And let's get back to our codes and we have input type date for birthday, and for this email, your first instinct might be use input type text because users writes some text inside this email input, but there's actually an input type email for this. And what is the difference between input type email and input type text? We will see that. It just looks like input type text, but with a difference, like a validation difference. And what is that validation difference? And we will see. So this would be our email. And for this birthday, we are going to use Control D, Control D, Control V. And this would be our email here. Yes, the type is email, everything is email here. And if we come back here, can put the zoom on 175% for test, and this is the input type email. As you can see, it just looks like the input type text that we had, but the difference is, let's see what the difference is. Let's check the difference. For this form, let's actually put the method on get, so we can actually submit this form. And the action, we just put a pound sign or hashtag, and at this form input at the end of this section here, we can use actually a HR tag. Okay, inside this HR tag, we can create a button. Type is submit, and we can actually say submit. So let's hit refresh, and when we so the difference is, let's see, we write something inside all of these, and when we submit this form, it just the validation that I was talking about, this is the validation. It validates so that make sure that this is an email actually, and this is actually a front-end validation here. And so we can say something.com, and this would be a valid, and as you can see now, the form is submitted. So let's see, get back to our code. So this is input type email. It just looks like input type text, but difference is it just has an extra validation here. And let's get back to our codes, to the image actually. And the other one is website. For the website is just same as input type text, but we are going to put a type on URL. The URL is actually just like email, but when I say just like email, I mean it has no difference with input type text, but just like email, it has a validation, and the validation is actually specific to URL. It checks to see if it's actually a URL. So the email here would be website here. And let's come back to the code, hit refresh, and this is now a website. As you can see, when we submit, this is, you say, please enter a URL. This is not a URL. But if we hit a URL, for example, let's youtube.com, and this is actually a URL, and hit submit. Now this is submitted. So this is the input type URL we can use for the website. And let's come back to this, and the income, this is where we should use input type number for this. So let's get back to our codes, Control Shift D to duplicate lines here, and this is, instead of website, we just use income, and the income is actually in USD, so let's write that USD over there, and this would be our income. And for the income, we are going to use input type number. Let's hit save this and come back to the code, hit refresh. As you can see, the one difference that you can see, it has these arrows where we can type something here, and these arrows can actually change it. And we can actually, the step of these arrows is 1 unit. So you can see that this is from changing from 1 to 1 unit. We can actually change that a step. There's actually a step attribute, and we can say the step would be like 10. So the when we set the step on 10, the steps are 10 actually. So there are so many other attributes for so many these inputs or this input, but we will cover different type of attributes. If any input had a attribute, we'll cover that in future. Don't worry about that. But for now, we covered basically all these inputs. But for this last one here, we haven't covered this. We cannot use input type for the last one. For example, this was input type text, the input type date, or input type number. But this one is not an input type. This is a select option. And what do we mean by select option? Well, it says select your region. Well, probably it means that Asia or Africa or Oceania or America, but probably that's what it means by region. And this is actually a perfect example by some flaws and some errors or some mistakes in the things that people give us. When we work with the UI UX designer, the UI UX designer gives us a perfect output and we can work on that. But when we do not cooperate with UI UX designer, we cooperate with the user or customer or the client. For example, the client says select your region, but it never told us what are the options. It says the choose. It's probably a drop down box, and it chooses from a drop down. But the person that has designed this has never given us the options or different values in this region, and this is something that happens a lot. And usually in these circumstances, you just contact the client and tell, hey client, you have said select your region, but what are the options inside that select your region? You just contact with the client and fix it. So let's imagine that I contacted with my client and he said I just mean the continents like Africa and Asia, things like that. So but for this we need to use select option. So let's get back to our codes and let's duplicate this one. But the difference is that we do not use input type for this anymore, and this would be select your region. Okay, and this would be a select tag. This is what I mean by select tag. For all of these we had input types, but for this drop down select that we are going to use, and you will see the output, we use select options, and we actually create a select tag, option, not option group. We create a select tag, and inside that we have put so many different options. For example, let's say Asia and Africa and Oceania. What? I'm terrible at. Let's search that in Google. I'm not sure about the spelling. Oceania. And so for now, let's see the result. This is the result. Okay, the ID is region and the name is region. Let's come back here, hit refresh, and as you can see, this is the drop down box that is presented here. But Oceania continent, maybe I'm writing it wrong. Continent. Yes, I was writing it wrong. So this is the actual spelling. So sorry. So get back to this. So we have different values for this Oceania and say America, Europe. Okay, these are the 5 continents. If I missed any continent, just forgive me, but I think I think these are all the continents. Europe, yeah, so if I consider the South America and North America, all of it as America. Okay, let's come back here, hit refresh, and this is the region, but for the default one it says choose. It's not selected with Asia. But what are these values here? We will select that choose. These values, as you can remember, when users writes something in here, for example, it says Ali, and we submit the form, as you can see this URL top here, it says the first name is Ali. the last name is something, so the value is actually the something that we are trying to send for backend. So we actually we can hold down Alt, double click, double click, double click, double click, and hit Control C, and come back here, hit Control V, and Control Shift left, and Control Alt L to lowercase them all. So let's come back here, hit refresh. Let's get back, and for this I can say that we can set that on, for example, Asia, submit, and as you can see now the region is set to Asia. So this is the value that we are saying. It says we are sending for the back end, the value attribute, and this is the name is region, and this is the select option that I was talking about. So this is the last one, but we need to fix something. When it says select your region, it's the first thing that is selected is actually choose here. So we can fix that with another option tag here, but the value is empty. But we say that, for example, choose. All right, let's get back, refresh, and it says choose, and now this is something that we can this is okay, I think. So we have written the four section or form groups up there, and let's use CSS in order to make them look right. So let's get back to our codes, and inside this form, and we can give it a class to this form, and I call it general form. Okay, and I'm going to select every input and every select tag inside this general form. And so let's go to our CSS, and I'm saying that general form, every input type and every select tag. So I have selected them all, and I'm just trying to say with 100%, and the display should be on block. Display should be block. Let's come back, get back here, hit refresh, and this is actually what has been, but the display is block. Okay, but we need to use display flex. Okay, for this form div, we give this form div here, dot form div. The display should be flex. Okay, we can go we can actually use that dot general form dot form div, and this is something I actually like to use. So come back here and use this arrow, and I'm saying that this form div, which is exactly inside this general form, go ahead and select this, and the display is on flex. So let's come back here, hit refresh, and you can see the display is on flex. But we need to have 4 of them here and 4 of them to the next line. So in order to do that, we can just give a width of 25% to all of these form groups. Okay, so we can go ahead and Control Shift D and select this form group here, and we can actually say that the width of each one of them should be on 25%. And let's come back here, hit refresh, and the width is actually on 25%, but there's something about display flex, and if you remember previous season, this was something called flex wrap. Okay, the flex wrap is on no wrap by default, and when we set that on wrap, it wraps them all so that with 25% is actually applied, and we have something like this. And we can actually, there's a margin for the body. If you take a look at here, see, this is the body that we have, and you see that orange area, which means the body has a margin by default, this 8 pixel margin by default. So we can actually go back to this codes that we have, and just like previous season, we can choose a star selector and set the margin of everything to 0 and padding of everything to 0, because this is something that I want to handle it myself. I don't want anybody or browser or anything change these margins or padding of element. Everything has a margin 0 and a padding 0 unless I tell it otherwise. So for this padding here, so you can see everything here, and let's for this form group here, I'm going to give it a padding of 10 pixels, and let's see how 10 pixel looks like. This is how 10 pixels look like. But we have a problem here. When I say that form group has a padding of 10 pixels, we have messed up something here. So let's come back to this input type here. For example, this div here, this website div here, you can see this has some paddings inside it, okay, and this. So because it has some padding inside it, it gives it some extra space, and that's why we have this result here. So see, let's understand why this is happening. Well, this has 25% width, 25% width, 25% width, but when I apply some paddings to this, the width of the element and the height of the element will be increased, and since it's increased, it will be slightly bigger than 25%. So that's why there is not enough space for this birthday to go there. So we need to fix this. We have actually multiple ways of fixing this, but if you remember, we had something called box sizing. What was that box sizing? Here, let's come back here to inspect element. The box sizing that we had, it was something like this here. This would be our box sizing. Let's actually increase the height of this. Okay, so this is our box sizing, which says when we, for example, let's say we call this a div, and we say, hey div, you have 20 pixel of width. When we say 20 pixel of width, what do we mean by that? Let's change this box sizing so that you can see everything. The box sizing should be on border box, and let's save that and hit refresh, and as you can see, this is fixed. And why this is fixed, let's come back to this, to the code that we have. When we set the box sizing on border box, so the width of 25% is actually from the border, and so the padding is included in the width. So when we say 25% width, or for example 100 pixel width, anything, when we say the width is for the element and the padding and the border. Okay, so that's why this. But when the box sizing, the default value for box sizing is on content box. So when we say, for example, width is 200 pixels or 25%, the width of the element itself is actually 25% or 200 pixels. So that's why when the box sizing, this box sizing is on content box, what happens is the width of the element will be 25%, and the extra padding would cause extra space. So that's why it causes the problem. So that's why this is actually some kind of advanced. So many people don't know this box sizing. So that's why I am covering it in depth, and I actually spent so many time to explain this. So now everything is fixed. We have this this box sizing here. So this is it. That's enough for this session. So this is what we have designed so far, and we will continue working on this form, and hope to see you in the next session.